I know that even in just these few days, you've had a quite an eventful last few days. Talk about. I covered a little bit about what happened. I believe that was right around the time you must have arrived, right, a couple days ago. What happened, and could you also just maybe review why you went to Donetsk in the first place?
Yeah, so I came to Russia. I came to these regions which recently voted to realign with the Russian Federation to observe the referendums, right, that took place at the end of September, in which those that went out to vote in these regions, Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, Zaporozhye, voted overwhelmingly to realign formally with the Russian Federation. And so I'm here now in Donetsk. I said, well, I'm already here. I've got a visa. I'd like to see what's happening. So I made the decision to come down to Donetsk and to sort of see for myself what it's like to be here in this city that has been suffering from these ongoing artillery strikes by the Ukrainian regime for close to 9 years. So I got here on Saturday. It was a pretty eventful trip. To get down here is difficult. You have to take a train or a bus all the way from Moscow down to Rostov, and then you have to get a taxi. You have to cross the border because the Donetsk People's Republic is a separate entity. To get into it, it's not Russia. To get into it, you have to go through a border procedure. You have to speak with border guards, and you have to, explain to some extent. Here I am. I'm an American journalist. Obviously, on some level, I think that might cause some questions because the journalists that do come from the West tend to have a very specific point of view and kind of a very specific goal of what they want to show, and it's usually quite different from the reality, first of all, and also what the authorities here would necessarily would want for you to say in some level. Not that they're not that I'm being controlled or told what to say, but I think they view Westerners, with good reason, with a little bit more skepticism than we might get in Europe, for example. So I made it here on Saturday evening. I moved around a little bit. It took a little while for me to find a hotel, and I finally checked into the Donbass Palace around 9 p.m. Saturday night. Went upstairs, took a shower. I realized now that was kind of a luxury because I haven't had water since. And went out afterwards. I said, I'm going to go find some food. It's hard, right? There's a curfew. People don't really go out after 11 p.m. So I looked around. I was hoping maybe I could find something. This was about a little bit after 10 p.m. I sent a message to a colleague on WhatsApp. I said, hey, I'm here at the Donbass Palace. And I went out and looked around 15, 20 minutes. So 30 minutes after I left, less than 2 hours after I got here, I'm walking back from the restaurant, walking directly towards the Donbass Palace Hotel. And as I'm about 100 meters away from the front door of my hotel, walking directly towards it, I see a massive explosion directly in front of me. Flames, sparks shot up 3 stories high, glass shattered and rained down all around me. A huge shock wave sent tremors through my body. I went down low. I pulled out my phone and immediately started recording the scene. And if your audience has seen my Twitter feed or my Telegram, they will have seen this video. And just from what I'm saying, it's pretty clear I was terrified, man. I wanted immediately to run directly into my hotel, but doing so meant that I would have to go directly in the direction of this artillery strike. And what folks might not be aware of is that one of the tactics that the Kiev regime forces tend to utilize is what military folks might call a double tap. They have a follow-up strike. They wait for civilians to gather around, for the first responders to come, and then they hit it again. And so that was my fear. I didn't want to go into the follow-up strike. But at some point I realized, well, that follow-up strike could hit me right where I'm at. So it's better for me to just sprint. I ran probably faster than I have my whole life directly into the hotel. All the hotel staff and other guests had been ushered down into the bomb shelter. and they wanted to pull me down there as well. And I said, well, I think I'm kind of safe inside. I want to record what's happening. I don't necessarily want to run right back onto the street, but I don't want to be hiding down in the basement. I want to be aware of what's happening, and I'm here to record what's happening. So a couple minutes later, it seemed like the situation had calmed down a little bit. I went outside and I took a report. I made a report, and folks who've seen my social media might have seen that as well. I was pure adrenaline. The probably one of the most effective, comprehensive, best reports I've ever done, because I was just all adrenaline. And after that, I went back inside. I met up with some of the other hotel guests, some of the hotel workers, and some other journalists. And we kind of sat, decompressed, and drank a little bit of whiskey. And I talked to some of the guys. They said, well, welcome to Donetsk. You've been, that was your
Yeah.
baptism. That was your baptism by fire. You survived, you made it, and now you understand. You got just a little small taste of what we've all been going through for 9 years.
Wow. Wow. I mean, I'm sure everyone here is glad you're safe. I sure am glad you're safe. It's been a long way for you since we were on Katie's show talking about Keith Olbermann calling you a whore for dictators. What have you found through talking to people? Because this is what we get in the Western media. We get in the Western media that this is just rebels. They're Russian agents. They're working on behalf of Russia. Their sovereignty is being impinged upon. This is Ukraine's territory, and nothing about what's happened over the last 8 years, of course, right? It's all seen as some kind of fringe resistance that is Russia back. Could you talk about what people have been telling you? You got a little bit of a sense, I see, from that really horrific and very scary experience. But overall, what have people been telling you about what's been going on, and what people should know about what's been going on in this part of now Russia over the last 8 years?
Well, they tell me almost the same thing that I just told you. And, if this was really Ukraine, the question on everyone's mind is, well, then why are you shelling us every day? Why are you trying to kill us? Why are you striking at civilian areas where there's no military infrastructure? There's no artillery batteries set up out front here. It's just a civilian area. This is a hotel known to be frequented by international journalists. That's this is the third time, I should say, in 2 months that this same block has been struck. So for people here, if they're Ukraine, certainly the Ukrainian regime has not been notified about that. They absolutely treat everybody as though they're quote unquote Russian collaborators. So to me, it's very apparent why basically everybody that I've talked to has this same story, which is that we can't believe that we lived through this. We have gotten used to it somehow, which is incredible to me. Just coming here, I mean, this is a war zone. You don't have access to just normal uh, services that you should. Like I said, I haven't had water in 4 days, maybe, and internet obviously quite hard to come by, as you just found out, as I just found out. It's not a normal place to be, but people try to live their lives in a normal way. People don't want to live in fear. They can't hide away for 9 years. They have to come outside. They have to go about their daily lives. They have to walk their dogs. There is still some desire to socialize and to interact with each other and to have some level of normalcy. So people just kind of know in the back of their minds that at any moment I could be killed, but I can't live in fear. I can't be held hostage by these terror tactics that the Zelensky government decides to inflict on us on a daily basis, more or less as punishment, right? As punishment for having decided, what, we don't want to be part of Ukraine. We want to be part of Russia. We've always been part of Russia. We feel Russian. We speak Russian. Nobody here speaks Ukrainian. At least they certainly haven't been speaking it to me or to each other that I've noticed. So what I've seen since coming here is, on some level, what I expected, that people would overwhelmingly be in support of the Russian Federation. But what I guess kind of surprised me was that the level of commitment. It's significantly more than I saw in Moscow or even in Crimea. People here pretty much universally are thrilled with the fact that Russian Federation forces finally came in and are finally coming to protect them. These recent strikes that Russian Federation forces decided to inflict upon the Kiev regime forces to take out some of the military infrastructure, some of the energy infrastructure, that was greeted here with quite a bit of satisfaction, not the least of which is coming from the fact that, okay, if they don't have comms, they don't have internet, they can't communicate with each other, and they can't inflict more artillery strikes on us. And to me personally, having survived one of these within 2 hours of having arrived here, it's hard for me not to empathize with that. This wasn't my first interaction with the Kiev regime, because just a couple of weeks ago, for the crime of having come down here to perform journalism, for having come down here to witness and report on the referendums, I was placed on the official Ukrainian kill list, which is called Mirotvorets. That means peacemaker. This is a kill list that hundreds of children are on. At least a dozen journalists who've been placed on this kill list have been subsequently killed. And when they are, their picture is marked over with big red letters in Ukrainian reading "liquidated" right over their face. So that tells you kind of the attitude that they have towards people that they deem to be collaborators with Russia, Russian sympathizers, people who even just accepted a Russian passport, people who accepted Russian aid and who can't prove that they were forced to do it. They're deemed collaborators and they're marked for death. People like Roger Waters are on this list. People, US politicians, basically anybody who says or does anything that could somehow be construed as giving support to the Russian Federation or detracting from the Ukrainian cause are just thrown onto this list. And it might mean death, or it means if you try to enter Ukraine, the border guards use this list to check off who is and isn't allowed to be enter the country. And they also use it in court proceedings. There have been hundreds of court cases where people have been convicted just on the basis of what this website says. And, I would tell people to go check it out. You have to have kind of a strong stomach to do so, because if you type it in, you go to this website, you're immediately greeted with the most gruesome, horrific photos of bodies of people who have been deemed Russian collaborators, people, faces obviously dead. They've been kicked in, they're covered with dirt and sand. It's absolutely horrifying. This is what they want to do, not just to Russian soldiers or Donetsk People's Republic soldiers, but just random civilians and journalists. And, so for me personally, it's hard for me not to empathize with the people here when they say, you know what, it's about time for Putin to take the gloves off. So that wasn't, as I said, it wasn't my first interaction with Zelensky and co. My first one was being placed on the kill list. My second one, this first physical interaction with them, I just feel very blessed to have survived.